Hello and welcome back to the UCLA Bruins Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Ferguson, writer for UCLA on SI. Today we're going to be taking a look at Skyy Clark potentially returning against Michigan on Saturday, what this means for UCLA, kind of some of the pros and cons of him returning, and stuff of that sort. But before we get started, I want to thank everyone right now who is listening, Apple Music, Spotify, or even YouTube. It means a lot to me. Without further ado, let's hop right into it. Mick Cronin was recently asked on when Skyy Clark could come back, and it sounds like he could return against Michigan. While this is not set in stone, it is a big thing for UCLA. They have not had the guard depth regardless, and obviously Skyy Clark was the second leading scorer for UCLA before he went down with his hamstring injury. But there's a lot of pros and cons that are kind of prompted to that. Obviously, a pro is the depth being helped out a lot. With Clark going down, we saw Trent Perry fill that role, but there was no one really underneath him who could kind of serve, Trent Perry's role. So again, Eric Freni was supposed to be that guy, but we really have not seen him play substantial minutes. Donovan Dent and Trent Perry have had to play, 35 plus in these last 10 games, and those are going to add up for UCLA without a doubt. Fatigue will be a factor, especially heading into March, when the tournament starts, things like that. It's going to be harder for UCLA to kind of be rested for that. Another pro is obviously his shooting abilities. Skyy Clark's shooting is literally second to none on UCLA. He's a 45 plus three-point shooter. With him on the court, UCLA is going to hit a lot more threes. I know Trent Perry and Bilodeau have been good at that. Even, Xavier Booker, if you want to throw him in there, have been reliable three-point shooters this season. But Skyy Clark elevates them that much more, and we know the scoring output Clark can have. He had 25 plus on multiple occurrences this season. That is something the Bruins are going to need against these harder teams. After Michigan, there's going to be number 10 Michigan State, Illinois, and then obviously you have Nebraska to kind of end things off against ranked teams this season. So having that three-point shooting is going to be huge. However, there's a lot of cons that kind of come with, what I just said. For example, we know how good Trent Perry has played. He is easily UCLA's second best scorer behind Bilodeau since Clark went out with an injury, which just shows how well Trent Perry has been able to fill Skyy Clark's role. But with Skyy Clark coming back, it's going to be harder for Perry to get these minutes to really prove that he is a good piece for UCLA. Obviously, he did well off the bench when, Skyy Clark was there. But again, he has a starter's mentality right now. So it's going to be hard for Mick Cronin to decide how many minutes he wants to give to Perry or Skyy Clark or even Donovan Dent. I could see, a three-guard look for UCLA. But again, that kind of goes into the next con, the dynamics, switching up. 10 games is a lot of time, especially in college basketball. That's like around 30% of the season in itself. And UCLA has kind of had to play a different lineup than what they were used to with Skyy Clark. When Skyy Clark was playing, we saw a lot of Donovan Dent, Trent Perry, and then obviously Skyy Clark, Eric Daly Jr., and Tyler Bilodeau there at the 5 to kind of, be that more aggressive offensive team. But when that Skyy Clark went out, UCLA was just running, the regular two guards, Daly, Bilodeau, and then Booker. That's going to change when Skyy Clark comes back. We're going to see more of that three-guard look. But again, UCLA already got used to one, play style. Now they have to go back to a play style earlier in the year that really wasn't even that developed to begin with. So it's going to be interesting to see how UCLA will be able to navigate this. I think the three-guard look is something that will be, showcased a lot to end the season. If that's the best case for UCLA, I know UCLA has played well in these last 10 games. Number 4 Purdue was a great win. Obviously, they struggled at the beginning with losses to, Ohio State, Wisconsin, to name 2 off the top of my head. So yeah, like teams like that, UCLA has shown to be good, right? I mean, again, number 4 Purdue, and honestly, I like UCLA's odds better with the lineup they had against Purdue, against Michigan with Skyy Clark still injured. I want him back. There's no doubt. Like I said, his shooting and the depth he adds is going to help UCLA be a much better squad. But another con is I feel like there might be some growing pains with Skyy Clark coming back. A 10 game missing the last 10 games is going to be hard for any player. It doesn't matter who it is. Bilodeau missed 10 games. I don't think he'd be the best, right off the start. And again, it's against Michigan, number 2 team in the country, number 1 team in the Big Ten. It's going to be hard to kind of be better with, that much pressure on your shoulders already. You're expected to kind of come out and perform. So again, if he does come back, I don't expect him to see that many minutes. And like I said, he came off of a hamstring injury, which is one of the worst injuries that you can get in a season, because again, like I said, 10 games, and when you come back, you're not the same player, for a while. Right? There's a lot of physical limitations that kind of come with that. And well, I know Skyy Clark would be the player to overcome those. I don't think it is that realistic for Clark to come back and be that 15 plus point player for UCLA that they need right now. But with kind of all of that being said, looking to this Michigan game, again, it's hard to tell what we're going to see from Skyy Clark. Will he play 5 minutes, 10 minutes? I think 10 minutes is more realistic, but still, I don't like, him coming back at this game. If he came back against, USC, Minnesota, that gives me more hope that, Clark is going to be able to slide in seamlessly. Or even if he was able to come back against Washington or Rutgers. Those were the 2 games that I really wanted Clark to come back, because entering Michigan, you want him to be at 100%. And when he comes back now, he's going to be at a 50%. Obviously not 50% in terms of how healthy he is, but, as a player, readjusting to the flow of the game, things like that. That is something that is hard to overcome, especially missing 10 games. And what UCLA has established in these last 10 games has given us hope for, a good postseason after this. But it's going to be really hard to see what Mick Cronin decides to do. Like I said, should Trent Perry be getting up the more minutes than Clark moving forward? Is Trent Perry the starter? I don't really think so. Obviously, Skyy Clark is a better player, and Mick Cronin likes Clark. But for him to start, I feel like that is realistic for UCLA, not against Michigan, but after that. I think Trent Perry should be the starter. That is my personal opinion. I'm not in the building. I'm not that head coach with the 500 wins that Mick Cronin loves to flaunt in his press conferences. But still, I don't really know what Cronin is going to do. I think Trent Perry's the right play, especially with how he's playing. Probably the second leading scorer for UCLA in these last 10 games, which for any player, with that momentum, it's hard to kind of rip that away from him and have him playing on the bench with significantly less minutes. But with that being said, it's going to be really interesting to see what is going to happen. I'm happy that Clark's back, because that fatigue factor that I talked about earlier in kind of the pros is hard to ignore. With that being said, that's all I really have today. I'm happy Clark's coming back. Do I think he's the starter moving forward? I don't think so. I don't think he should be. But it's going to be interesting to see how he kind of develops and kind of, gets back to where he was prior to the injury. But anyways, thank you so much for listening right now. It means a lot. Again, it's going to be a huge game against Michigan. I can't wait to watch it and see how Skyy Clark fits in. If he does play, again, it's not 100%. But that's all I have. So anyways, forwards up and have a good day. Thank you.